Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. This is round number 4 of the season, coming to you today from Okayama. My name is Maunz. Alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Joshua Wilkie. We've now officially completed the first quarter of this season, and to ring in the second, we head to the track that played host to the season finale for Season 4 of 2024. Okayama is an exciting racetrack and an iRacing staple as well. Just about everyone on the service has driven around here at some point. And Josh, considering these drivers are only about a month and some change removed from the last season's race here, it's certainly going to be a known quantity. But just because it's a known quantity does not mean it's going to be boring.
Yeah, you know, absolutely probably the opposite, Ron, with everybody having the, the kind of laps they've probably turned around here in their iRacing careers from the beginning, as we all have at Okayama here on iRacing. It's probably going to make it actually a pretty exciting race, just because people will... they're kind of going to have this track under their belt. They should have some laps around here, you know. They've probably turned maybe even hundreds of laps around here in different pieces of machinery, kind of up through your iRacing career there, moving up tier levels and so on. So I would imagine that we're going to have a pretty similar race to kind of last weekend, where it's just going to be contentious the whole time.
Now, I will say last weekend was a historic race in the history of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, as for the first time at New Hampshire 1 week ago, we ran in the rain. Not going to have that problem here for Okayama, not going to have to worry about rain until Oulton Park later on in this season, but we'll certainly be touching on that a heck of a lot between now and then. But in this in this practice session still at the moment, I always forget that these broadcasts come in a little bit early as we're still in practice. I gotta say, Tortolo currently on the top of the pylon as it stands in practice, setting a 1:48.222. This man, though, Jorg Mani in the number 20 car, the Masters driver, currently the fastest of the Masters racers, and P3 as a newcomer to this series, who actually learned about how to get into this Formula Vee Weekend Warriors series 1 week ago during that broadcast of the Formula Vee race at New Hampshire. It's James Matthew Sheldon in the number 8 car, currently leading it in Spec 2 and second overall in this practice session. We'll just have to wait and see if these practice times will convert into the race that we have coming up. Of course, we'll have to worry about the draft in this practice compared to qualifying, which is solo, but nevertheless going to be a really good way to kick off the second quarter of this season. But I think before we move any further, Josh, we should probably take a look at the championship points standings, because we've got 3 races on the board, and we've already seen some very intriguing races, and we're starting to see the cream rise to the top. Tortulo currently on the championship points lead in the Spec 1 category, 297 points on the board. His championship rival from last season, these two traded paint and were battling hard for the championship last season at this very racetrack, but as it stands at the moment, they're a little bit farther apart early on into this season. But Jason Green still finds himself in P2, Nate Coliseo currently in 3rd, Chris Montgomery and Adam Thompson, SMB's very own, rounding out your top 5 in the Spec 1 category. Only 5 points between Green and Coliseo as well, and also another 5 between Montgomery and Thompson. So some really close fights to keep our eyes on very early doors into the season, though, so a lot can change. Moving on to Spec 2 now, and it's been a rather interesting season thus far for these drivers, but Andrew Luff has been dominating. He's taken every single checkered flag this season of the Spec 2 racers, and he finds himself in the championship lead. Daniel Salmon finds himself in P2. Michelle Lynn rounding out your top 3 at the moment in the Spec 2 category. Michelle did run in Spec 1 last season, but before then she had won back-to-back Spec 2 titles, so we'll have to wait and see how the series admin will be able to fare throughout this season. Travis Rail and Michael Latarulo rounding out your top 5 in the Spec 2 category. Then we're going to move on over to the Masters class, which has been another story of dominance for this man, Jorg Mani, in the 925 car. He has been brilliantly quick all throughout this season off the back of 2 straight victories, 1 at Lime Rock and wins at New Hampshire as well. And he's also been in contention for some overall victories in the process. So Jorg Mani, a brilliantly quick driver. Jim Brewster, the series admin, finds himself in P2. Nick Tullo, Alan DeGassis, my apologies, Antonio Reese rounding out your top 5 in the Masters category. So some really nice class championship fights to keep our eyes on thus far, Josh. So I'll ask you a somewhat loaded question here. What class championship fight do you think is going to be the most exciting to keep our eyes on?
Yeah, well, it's kind of unique with this series here that everybody is kind of racing together as well. So even though they are out of class, they are racing each other all the time. But I think if I had to pick one class, I got kind of fond of the S2 class just because that's what I was in last year. I've been moved up to the S1 class in a couple of the other series here on Ray Esports, and not doing so well this year so far, that's for sure. But I have a bit of a fondness for the S2 class. It's generally kind of scrappy down there, and you're not going to see always guys in S2 kind of punching up into the top 5 or even top 3, but every once in a while you do, and it makes it kind of an exciting class that you can go in there sometimes and you'll maybe be getting back of the pack, 10th and back, and then every once in a while you can kind of push up into the top 5 or maybe even the top 3, and it makes it pretty exciting.
And Andrew Love nearly won some races overall last season as a Spec 2 racer, so that's another good reason to keep an eye out for that class. Another class I'm certainly keeping my eyes on has to be Masters, because those who've tuned into the Weekend Warriors world with the Formula Fords and the Spec Racer Fords, y'all will probably be aware of the fact that Masters has been a staple over there for quite some time. But here in the Formula V's, this is the first season in which the Masters category has been running in this series, so really nice to see Masters make their appearance and give these drivers a really cool championship to try and fight for. But at the moment, these drivers, they're not worrying about fighting for a championship too much. Instead, they're worrying about fighting for the pole position. 15 minutes of qualifying set to begin right about now, already a minute on the board. These drivers have 4 laps to try and get the job done, which around a racetrack like this, 4 laps can go by in an absolute instant. Going off the practice times we saw a couple of moments ago, Tortolo was the fastest driver at that 1 minute 48.222. Then you have to go a little bit farther back to find Russ Lundberg, who set the slowest time in the practice session. But one driver who just caught my eyes, Josh, is CJ Berry. We've already seen him run a couple of races thus far this season. He ran this very same race last season, and he actually took the checkered flag in front of Tortolo and Jason Green. So CJ, we may have to look at Chris in that number 65 car, because he could be another contender to grab a victory. We saw Nate Coliseo go back-to-back earlier on this season at Lime Rock. Let's see if Chris Berry can do the same.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ron, for sure. Every time we see CJ Berry here in the races, he does really well. He's been punching pretty well above his weight there in that class. So I would not be surprised if we see him up front again today, kind of dicing it out with our usual suspects there of Tor and Jason Green. But really, we won't know until this session gets started up. It looks like maybe he's just kind of fiddling with some controls there, getting the car ready to go. Doesn't really look like he's warming up any tires or anything at the moment, but this will definitely just be his kind of warm-up lap here before he decides to go for a flyer. I don't think we've got anybody across the line quite yet here. We should be getting our first lappers here in pretty soon, and I would imagine, around here, it's going to be pretty close and contentious up at the front there, like we were saying in the run-up on it. Lots of laps around here in your iRacing career. You end up kind of starting here in the Mazdas, and then maybe you move up even actually to the V's or something like that, and then on to some other cars. But you're gonna have a few visits to this track early on in your career in iRacing.
Yeah, I've certainly got a couple of visits on my own. Even though I don't really do officials too much, I have some horror stories of doing some races around here. I think I may have shared this story the last season, but I remember doing an MX-5 Cup rookie race back in, it was probably 2021. I remember going for a ridiculous dive bomb overtake attempt into turn number 5, and that just turned very quickly into a round of bowling. So, hoping that these drivers in the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors will not replicate my brilliant performance from a couple of years ago here on the iRacing platform. Very, very good proof as to why I'm better off being behind a microphone instead behind the wheel. But nevertheless, these racers proving why they should be behind the wheel. About to get the first lap times on the board already. 3 minutes and 45 seconds in to this 15-minute long qualifying session. CJ Berry was just on his out lap, but he'll be getting a lap time on the board in the not too far off future. But some lap times about to get set here. I believe one of the first drivers to cross the line is going to be Jim Brewster, series admin himself. Yes, it is jumping up to the provisional pole. Antonio Reese going to jump in front of him. Marcone going to jump in front of him. Very tough to try and keep tabs on all of this. Single car qualifying, obviously, so these racers going to have no other worries outside of dealing with the track. Tortolo, though, jumping up to the provisional pole, being joined on the front row as it stands at the moment by another Formula Vee Weekend Warriors champion in the form of Jesus Rodriguez. He won the championship in Season 3 for 2024. However, Season 4 proved to be a really tough ride for the driver of the number 76 car. Ran occasionally, and the times that he did, he seemed to get struck by falling anvils more often than not. But Rodriguez back with us this season, and I will say, Josh, this is the most amount of pace we've seen out of Rodriguez thus far this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like we were saying, it's not super surprising just because people turn so many laps around here. So you're going to have some, this wouldn't, I say, be a specialist track necessarily. I know there are some, it's kind of a contentious track too as well. I've definitely heard some pretty mixed feelings about this track from the drivers there. Some of them really loving it, and some of them just kind of hoping that they never really have to drive here much again. And this being one of the kind of harder sections right through here, Rod, just to get this section right and not kind of off track and get down on that power as early as possible can get a little bit confusing. And another really good passing opportunity here into this left-hander as well. Another one you really want to get right. And it looks like we're probably going to be dealing with a little bit of gravel again today, Ron, which has been rearing its head. It's definitely a talking point of this season, is just how much that gravel has been getting kicked up onto the track and really making things kind of interesting, let's say.
Yeah, it makes it interesting. It makes it fun. And the reason why I say it's fun is because there is fun in dysfunction. In our past experience covering, actually, Josh, you were on track for all of these instances with the other Formula Fords running at Brands Hatch and dealing with turn number 2, which eventually just turns into a giant gravel slip and slide. I get absolutely horrendous flashbacks whenever I think of that. So fingers crossed, we won't have to worry about that around here. But Okayama, a very old school racetrack, hosted Formula One back in the 90s. And even back then, it was a rather short course for F1. This full layout that we're running at the present moment is 2.3 miles long with only 11 corners and that massively long back straightaway between turn number 4 of Atwood Curve and turn number 5 of Hairpin. Yes, that is actually what it's called around this racetrack. That takes up a massive bulk of the circuit, and it's also going to create a heck of a lot of overtaking opportunities in these draft-heavy Vs.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Ron. This is going to be a bit of a back-and-forth race around here. I think there is some pretty good drafting opportunity. Like we keep saying in the run-up here, there's going to be, the skill level around here is going to be fairly high, so I would imagine that we're going to get some passing, and it's going to be another one of those races that we just continue to talk about there where, you're playing that game of, should I try to get out in front of this guy now? Should I make my move now, or should I just wait and wait, till the last 5-10 minutes of the race and then start making moves? And as we know, there's some people out there who have some patience and some others who don't, and that's just kind of what you have to deal with out there, and really making good decisions throughout the race and trying to keep that pace up is really going to be how it goes. And we know, one of the best ways to lose one of these races is just kind of, get into an accident with somebody else, or just fight too hard with the guy or the drivers around you, and you might just end up kind of falling to the back.
That's a very good point that you raised there, Josh. Having to go through these races kind of with blinders on. You want to stay focused on your own race. You don't want to get caught up in any major battles. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself either hitting your competitors, hitting the grass, or hitting one of the barriers around this racetrack. So fingers crossed that these racers will be able to keep it clean, but in the close quarters battles that we see week in and week out from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors Series, would not be too shocked if occasionally we see some fisticuffs break out. But these drivers still in the midst of this qualifying session right now, just about wrapping up some of their qualifying sessions. I see Jorg Monty has dipped back to pit lane, along with Kohan, I believe, is a driver of the number 12 car, currently qualified in 4th. Jesus Rodriguez also towing back down to pit lane. Jorg Monty currently on the provisional pole in the Masters category, qualified now in 8th as Chris Montgomery jumps up to 6th. Tortolo on the provisional pole, not only overall, but in the Spec 1 category as well. And in Spec 2, it is a real intriguing fight that we've got going on at the moment. Guido Murazuki, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, is a Spec 1 driver. So it would actually be the driver currently qualified in 11th of Elwin Parnell, currently qualified in the 556 car, finds himself in 11th at the moment. I don't believe I have ever seen Parnell race in this series, but either way, that's one heck of a way to begin your Formula Vee Weekend Warriors career with a pole in the Spec 2 category. However, one driver that I am keeping my eyes on is a driver who was, third or fourth quickest in practice earlier on, James Matthew Sheldon, in the number 8 car, currently qualified in 13th as it stands currently, and not terribly far off of that Spec 2 pole.
Yeah, it looks like we've got another a couple new drivers here. At least definitely that's one of them, and it looks like he's doing pretty well so far today. So yeah, that's up in the top 3 in Spec 2 on your first outing here, and that's really good. So we will see kind of how that one plays out. It looks like Andrew Love not really jiving with this track here today. You'd expect him to be maybe a little bit farther up that order there, and we'd actually, you know what, we need to throw out a big thank you to Wayne Buttermore today for sponsoring this V race. And you know, he's one of our staples out here, always out there plugging around in a V or some other piece of machinery all the time there. And we thank you a whole bunch today, Wayne, for sponsoring this V race. We can't do these without you, and without our sponsors, and without our drivers out there supporting us and everything. So we thank you very much for that, Wayne, and hopefully you can have a good race today as well, Ren.
Yeah, we'll have to sprinkle some pixie dust on top of him for some good luck. That's what my dad always used to do to me whenever I was a little bit down and dejected in my karting days. He would sprinkle a little bit of pixie dust on me so I could get the most performance as I could out of that race car. So fingers crossed he doesn't get struck by a falling anvil, currently qualified in 37th as it stands at the present moment. I gotta say as well, one thing that we've occasionally mentioned throughout the past season, and we'll say season and a quarter now, of the Weekend Warriors series, while Josh and I have been doing these, is the growing field size week in and week out of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors series. When it started up here on Slow Motion Broadcasting a little bit into Season 3 of 2024, the fields, I wouldn't say they were small, but they were, I would say, probably in the like below the 20s, we could say, in terms of the driver count. Now, oh my god, I mean, in this session right now, we've got 37 drivers to set a qualifying time. Russ Lundberg, the 38th driver in the session at the moment. I'm not sure if he will be going on to the racetrack to set a qualifying time. I'll also double check to make sure he is still in the session, which I believe he is, but still 37 cars out here on the racetrack. That is a massive amount of drivers, and we're really happy to see the participation growing in what has proven to be an exciting series.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. It's always great to see more drivers getting involved, especially in cars that are so much fun. Honestly, you know, sometimes at least anyway, the slower cars get a bit of a bad rap, and they really shouldn't, because they're definitely the most fun cars to race on the service. The Vs, the SRFs, the FFs, all of the slower cars, even the Mazdas, the Skippies are a little bit contentious with some people, but I really like them a lot. You know, they can be kind of the more fun cars. There's a little bit more line out there to take. It's not quite so finite into every single corner. You know, the closing speeds are a little bit slower, so your mind doesn't get melted every single lap when you're trying to pass someone, and it just makes for really, really, really fun racing. And I think that's why we're seeing, you know, on top of our broadcasts here on Slow Motion Broadcasting and Ray Esports being, you know, one of the cooler leagues to be a part of, and obviously the broadcasts just look fantastic these days, but I think, you know, it has a lot to do with the cars and just how much fun it is to be out there driving as well. And obviously the drivers that are out there driving as well. This series and the league itself there, it's just great to be a part of.
Yeah, it is absolutely fantastic to be a part of the Weekend Warriors world. Strangely enough, in about I'm trying to think. Well, for season 2 here of 2025, it'll officially mark about a year ever since I joined the Weekend Warriors series as a commentator full-time. Start off with a different broadcaster and start off on the Formula Fords and Spec Racer Fords, branching out now to the Formula V's and doing those two as well here. Now on slow motion broadcasting, which has just action all the time. It gives you more of a reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action, which is something we're expecting to have in spades for this race, Josh. And looking through a point that you raised earlier on, while I believe we were still in practice, that are in the very, very early stages of qualifying, about how close this field was going to be, that is very much so come to pass. You got Tolo there on the provisional pole, and you have to go about 3-ish tenths of a second back to Suleiman Khan, the Brit, in the number 53 car. And then after that, you only have to go a tenth and then less than a tenth. Look at the gaps between Jason Green, currently qualified in third. You have to go all the way down to Ethan Orr in 19th to find a driver who's only half a second back. That is just absolute madness.
Yeah, that's Formula V's for you. You know, again, just like I was mentioning before, these slower cars, that's the kind of racing that you end up getting. You're 1/10 off everybody in front of you all the way down to 19th place, or even maybe more than that sometimes. Sometimes you can have a whole field that's almost 1 second off each other, and there's like 30 drivers in it, and that's the V's for you. That's the kind of slower cars for you. You end up promoting some really good racing and some closer battles and stuff like that, as well as when they get out on track. If you think this is close and tight, we're about to be drafting each other as well, and you know, you can pretty much get a piece of paper in between the drivers at that point. You're really just having to make a decision of, am I actually as fast as my draft is showing me right now? Should I pass this guy, or am I just going to have him on my butt again in a minute? And you really do have to kind of make those decisions in the car of, you know, is this my pace, or should I just kind of hang behind this guy and see if maybe he makes a mistake?
Yeah, these drivers going to be lurking in the background of each other's respective battles and try and seize the opportunity whenever any sort of mistakes may end up befalling some of these racers. But as you can see, just based off the fact that about 50 people completely teleport their way into the infield of Okayama, we're ready to get this race up and rolling. Got that starting grid loaded up in just a couple of moments. In a couple moments time, there it is. It's going to be Tortolo grabbing the pole position for this race. The reigning champion here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors going to be starting from the pole. Suleiman Khan, who's actually a Brit, going to be lining up on the front row. He's representing Bulgaria in heart, but he's actually from the UK. Jason Green going to be starting in third. Then we have Richie Kohan starting this race in the fourth position in the number 12. Jesus Rodriguez in fifth. Chris Montgomery starting in P6. Nate Coliseo starting in P7. Rounding out a small little cluster of Spec 1 racers. Jörg Mani going to be the highest starting Masters starting this race in 8th. James Sheldon in his Formula Vee Weekend Warriors debut will be starting this race in P9. Let's see how he can do, grabbing his first ever pole position in this series. Then starting this race in 10th is going to be CJ Barry. Alan DeGassis will be starting this race in 11th. Parvinder Ladar for possibly my favorite team, Bada Bing Racing. We'll be looking to have a Bada Bing result today from the 12th position at the start. I'm looking through the rest of the drivers that we have in this grid. We will have starting this race in P13. It is going to be Guido Marzuki in the 19. Ewan Parnell going to be starting in 14th. Jason Perry in the 15th spot. Jim Brewster, Series Admin, in P16. I will note, breaking the fourth wall very briefly, I don't have my iRacing radio muted at the moment, so I'm hearing Jim Brewster talk to these racers as I go through this, so I may go insane by the time I'm done with the starting grid. Mark Cohen going to be starting in 17th. Andrew Love in P18. Ethan Orr in the 222 car will be starting in 19th. Brian Szynski going to round out your top 20. And looking through the rest of the starters that we have in this grid, had to take a quick little sip of water there. Michelle Lynn starting in 21st, Antonio Reese in 22nd, David Fitzgerald in 23rd, Jeff Jacobson in the number 40 car going to be starting this race in P number 24. Still got some more starters to go through. These grids are always, I wouldn't say torturous to go through because it's awesome to see. Russ Telker going to be starting in 25th, Dan Szynski in 26th, Harbrelio Garcia in 27th, Daniel Salmon in 28th, Matthias Marin in 29th, Michael Lattarulo in 30th, Jason Reiner in 31st. Brian Hansen in 32nd, Nick Tulo in 33rd. Remember to breathe, folks. Travis Rail in 34th, Jeffrey Beck in 35th, Carl Burke in the 925 car will be starting this race in 36th. And looking through the final few starters, we've got Wayne Buttermore and Russ Lundberg. There we go. That's our starting grid. And Josh, I'll let you get a word in edgewise in a couple of moments.
Yeah, sorry about that, Ron. I think I had a bit of a mic problem. I would have helped you out a little bit with the intro there. Thank you for getting all of those names. We got a huge grid here today as the pace car pulls off, and it looks like we are about to get started here, Ron. I'm going to have to restart my project file because once again we've had some sort of an issue with our project file here.
Nevertheless, ready to get things up and rolling from the fourth race of this season. The green flag is out and the drivers are on their way. And you can see already some drivers trying to get some moves done in the grass. Heading down the start-finish straightaway. I don't think so, gents. 3 wide into turn number 1. Look at that. Jason Green trying to wheel it on the inside line. Having a very close battle involving himself and a whole lot of other competitors as Tortolo leading them. Heading out of turn number 2 at the very beginning of this race through what is one of the most fun sections of this track, the Moss S of 3, now into what would be a good overtaking opportunity if a giant straightaway didn't follow it. This is turn number 4 of Atwood Curve. Really important to get a good exit out of here, otherwise you're going to find yourself in a world of trouble. But I think we may see Richie in the 12 try and get a move done on him in the not too far off future. Jason Green finding himself in 3rd at the moment. Sullivan Khan rounding out your top 4 with Chris Montgomery in tow in 5th. But look at these drivers fan out, taking the defensive line, heading down into the hairpin of turn number 5. These racers giving us an excellent battle to talk about at the very start of this race. And hey folks, we only have a minute on the clock. We've still got 29 more left to go and have some side-by-side racing all throughout this field, heading our way out of turn number 7 for the first time.
Yeah, it looks like we got a pretty clean start here so far on. We got some lot of cars all line astern here coming down the back straight, and it looks like we're going to sort ourselves out here. We are going to mention here that CJ Berry is in S1, and I'm going to get that up reflected on the board here as soon as I possibly can. But CJ Berry is an S1 driver here in 12th place, and we'll get that fixed up right away here. We're just getting through some couple problems with our overlay system here, but no big issues as the race looks like it's pretty well underway here, Ron.
Oh, and you can see the drivers running off into the dirt coming out of the final corner, and even before then as well, coming out of turn number 10, but side-by-side racing involving Kohan the 12 and Tolo in the number 1. Look at Jason Green in the 160 car. He may try and seize the opportunity if these two come to blow side-by-side still. Through turn number 2, look at that Tolo, my apologies, holding off on that spot, and more dust getting kicked up into the air. The gravel traps around this racetrack. I have a feeling that by the end of this 30-minute race we're in the midst of right now, most of the gravel trap is going to end up on the racetrack itself as Kohan blinking wildly, heading down into turn number 4. Tulo still holding on to the lead.
Absolute hornet's nest out there, Ron. This is going to be a big decision-making race. As you can see here on the left-hand side on our timing screen there, it's basically just all orange and yellow because everybody is right up each other's chuff here all the way down into 37th place. So as we see some almost 4 wide action there, a few cars back, but everybody seemed to sort it out here. This section, always gets a little bit difficult in here, and it looks like we have had an incident here, Ron.
Oh! That's 3 cars stacked into it, and another spinner coming out of the corner. Look at that, threading the needle. Oh, bang, into the side. I'm not sure who that was. More cars coming in. Look at that evasive action. I think Guido Marzuki, Jason Perry, who we see in the number 97 car, and Jason Grider all getting a piece of that action through turn number 5. Not the kind of action you want to be a part of in a race. Instead, it's the kind of action that's going to drag you back down to pit lane and give you a scolding from your crew chief, Richie Kohan, in the number 12. Getting the move done on Tolo to slip his way up into the lead for now, as I believe the Spec 2 leader of Sheldon has had some sort of off-track encounter. Never mind, he's popped back into existence. I think he may be dealing with some slight technical difficulties, but right now, side-by-side racing still going on. This is Kohan and Tolo. Tolo on that outside line, battle last late breakers into turn number 1. Look at this, ran the outside, gonna turn into the inside line through turn number 2 for Tolo. And look at Jason Green reeling these two in. Green, always a driver who doesn't go for the flashiest of moves. He is a driver who you just see lurking in the background, lurking in the shadows, and waiting for the opportunity to pounce. He may find an opportunity here soon, as these two racers got me side by side through Atwood curve of turn number 4. They're going to sacrifice both of their exits, as Green going to enjoy the draft and enjoy the hole being punched in the air by both of these racers. Gotta say, Tortolo, who we talk about a lot, is the reigning champion here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, and is also a real-life Formula Vee racer, so he is a very skilled racer, both in iRacing and real life as well. So very hard to discount against him. However, he's still a human. He's not an alien. He's going to make some mistakes here and there, and he's not going to have a clean sweep. Doesn't have a clean sweep of the races thus far. Already has lost one to Nate Colosio for the second race of the season, but has 2 checkered flags in his back pocket already, fighting like hell to get a third.
Absolutely, and that's what it's going to be today for sure, Ron. You're going to have to fight for every little position you take today, and it's, just staying alive out here is going to be difficult. Everybody wants a position. You can see some of that gravel getting kicked up onto the track and stuff as well. That will be rearing its head here shortly, and I'm sure we're going to have somebody fall to the wayside because of some of that gravel at some point here. But, yep, we are pretty much line astern here, all the way back to, wow, I don't even know. It's pretty much the entire field. It's pretty much line astern still. And I have a feeling that's the way it's going to be, as it looks like it's still getting pretty pointy up at the front end here, Ron.
Yeah, it is still very, very pointy. These racers poking each other in the sides at this point in time. Some racers being like a thorn in the sides of their adversaries, others being a little bit of a hug for now. But again, things are going to change between now and the checkered flag. When it comes time for that pay window to open up, these racers still side by side. Tulo and Kohan giving us a beautiful fight to talk about over the past couple of laps. Look at Jason Green, though. He's feeling racy in that 160 car. Don't really talk about Jason Green getting involved in battles too much, not because he's a slow driver, but usually because he likes to lurk in the shadows. But trying to get moved on Tula, and maybe gonna go for the 2-for-1 deal heading down this straightaway. Look at Kohan taking the 50-50 line, running 50% of his car off the track and 50% of it on it, as 3 wide racing gonna take us into turn number 5. These racers battling hard for the win. Suleiman Khan running in 4th would be the one taking advantage if these drivers come to blows, but they single file out, and now you can see Tortolo getting a move put back on Jason Green to slip his way up into 2nd, and Green's way down into 3rd, as look at that, wildly off the track is Shohan in that number 12 car. Look at that, some very aggressive lines, an interesting interpretation of track limits from the driver of the 12. He's still going to hold on to it, though, and I have no idea how.
Oh, that's Richie and Thor are tore off the road there. I just saw that through the front end, and unfortunately it looks like they clipped rear wheels, and that will be that for those front 2 drivers. Unfortunate, Ron. We'll have to come back, have a look at that as soon as we can.
And so Green and Kohan still involved in this fight. Tolo, on the other hand, he's out of it. He's all the way down in 11th, 5.8, nearly 6 seconds back of your now race leader of Green. So we're going to take a look at this. This was a whole lot of stuff going on. Look at those interesting interpretation of track limits from Kohan in the 12. Tulo in the middle of 3 wide action heading off into turn number 8. Let's see what happens here. Oh, drifting out to the side is Tolo, and just nowhere to go is Kohan. You can see some more drivers stacking up as a result. Jesus Rodriguez, I believe it was also Guido Marzuki coming to blows as a result of that. Actually, no, my apologies. It may have been Mark Cohn in the 239 car. Let's see his perspective in the LC Motorsports entry. There you go. Contact being made with himself and Rodriguez, and up into the air goes Cohn, nearly coming to blows yet again with Rodriguez on the rejoin. I think he had to tow back the pit lane because of the damage he picked up, backing it into that inside concrete barrier. That concrete does not give at all. It's not Tempur-Pedic, and I think Cohn learning that the unfortunate way that's going to take him out of contention, as we have 6 cars covered by practically nothing. We had 2 packs of 3 heading down into turn number 5, a 6-pack of Formula V's.
Absolutely, Ron. That was, unfortunate little incident there. It's, a little mistake, a couple off tracks, and then it looked like, unfortunately, Richie just kind of came down a little bit too much. I'm not sure if he just wasn't aware of the car under him there, but And then after that, it was just kind of avoidance that caused a bunch of other little incidents as well and took a few drivers out there. But so far, we're looking fairly clean. Other than that, there's been kind of 2 major ones here. But when you get close to 40 cars on track, you're going to have a few. So I think we're doing pretty good so far. We will see if we can't catch up with that first incident around the first or second lap there as soon as we can as well, Ron. I believe it was CJ Berry and Jason Perry and stuff as well that kind of had a bit of a falling anvil on. I believe it was the second or third lap here. See if we can't catch up to that.
CJ Berry and Jason Perry. Josh is a poet and he don't know it, but let's take a look at this side-by-side racing heading off into turn number 1. They're not side-by-side yet. They are into the braking zone. There's Perry just spinning it and Berry with nowhere to go. More contact being made. Like 4 cars merged within each other. Holy cow, we might have to break out the tarps for that one. I think if this was a real-life race, we'd probably have to have a moment of silence. I will pour out my water that I have on my desk in solitude for that very odd collision heading down into the hairpin.
Yeah, it looks like it. Unfortunately here, drivers behind just really didn't have anywhere to go as we see Andrew Love making some pretty good avoidance there to get around that one.
That was a very odd-looking collision, but look at this, nearly 4 wide, heading down into the hairpin at turn 5, 3 wide for sure, involving Coliseo, Khan, and Montgomery. Look at that, though, nearly losing it out of the corners, Richie Cohan in the 12. In all of this drama, Jason Green has completely, for lack of a better term, he's completely pissed off into the distance. That is an insane gap. Now 2 seconds nearly between himself and Cohan. Jason Green kicking on the hyper jets, not having to worry about the battles that he had earlier on in the race. Instead, he has just put his nose to the grindstone and has quietly disappeared.
Yeah, absolutely. The only way they're going to be able to catch up to him, really, Ron, is if they start working together. And at the moment, at least, it does not look like that is the case. That they're looking to look together here, Richie and Coliseo, as they go 2 wide here down the straightaway again. They're going to need to start drafting each other and leapfrogging if they want to catch up to Jason Green here, and it doesn't look like they're super willing to do that, at least at this stage.
Yeah, but these drivers are still willing enough to go side by side through just about every single corner. And look at that, nearly coming up blows coming out of turn 1 is Jim Brewster, going very, very close to making contact with himself and the newcomer of Parnell. Parnell currently leading it at the moment in the Spec 2 category. And Josh, here's a good question that I'll ask you here real quick. What corners around this track have we not seen drivers go side by side through yet?
I think it's probably been every single one so far, Ron. This is, one of those tracks, again, where you just have that confidence to kind of go everywhere. You're going to have turned so many laps around here that it feels like, every corner is maybe an opportunity. And I have a feeling that we're going to see pretty much every corner used 2 wide, maybe even 3 or 4 wide, as we see here from the front pack. Jason Green just leading everyone. And here, just an absolute hornet's nest of cars from second back here trying to sort it out, as it looks like Coliseo has kind of risen to the top of that pack.
Yeah, Coliseo already has a checkered flag this season. That coming at Lime Rock about 2 weeks ago, but the driver of the number 25 car has been incredibly quick all throughout this season. This would be a really good result for Coliseo in terms of the championship. Oh, my apologies. Perfect time to get a burp. I'm not sure what just happened a couple of moments ago. My vocal cord just decided to go on strike for a few moments. It must be working at Starbucks now. Oh, boy. Very dated reference. Anyone tuning into the stream in a couple of years will have no idea what that means. I'm sure there's probably some people tuning into this broadcast, i.e. my father, who probably doesn't know what that means either. But nevertheless, Nate Coliseo in the number 25 car, this would be a really good result for him in terms of the championship if it wasn't for the fact that Jason Green, who's leading him, currently running P2 in the Spec 1 standings. If it wasn't for the fact that Green was leading over Coliseo, but Coliseo and Green certainly not going to mind this result considering Tolo running down in 7th, but he's cutting his way through the field like a hot knife through butter. Just got a move done on Parnell right after getting a move done on Brewster, and still holds the fastest lap of the race at a 148.445. So despite the fact he may be down, Tortolo is not out of it.
Yeah, not at all, and that's another kind of a cool sort of aspect of these cars in this series here, is that you can, you can kind of put a put a fast lap in from almost anywhere if you get the right lap and a clean lap and a good draft. As it looks like Jim Brewster's going to be kind of testing it 3 wide here, and looks like maybe he thought better of that one, so we'll live to fight another day here. But Ford definitely has the pace out there for sure. We know he has pace. We know he can catch up to these guys. It's really just going to be a matter of trying to kind of work his way through the field here, which isn't going to be easy as we're seeing him go off the road there to make one of these passes work.
Yeah, it's still going to be a little bit difficult to try and get some moves done through certain sections of this racetrack, but despite the fact that it's difficult, these drivers are still going to try and risk it for the biscuit. Parnell and Brewster side by side through turn number 8 and 9, and Brewster going off the track into the wall. That is a pretty, it doesn't seem like a huge hit, but that was directly to the wheel. I think that it may not have been some damage, because I think I just saw that front left tire just pop its way back into existence. So I think no harm, no foul, kind of, for Jim Brewster. Losing out on some time, though. We're going to take a look at the replay to see what happened to the driver of the 933 car. Some contact being made that went side-by-side through 8 and side-by-side into the entrance of 9, and that was a pretty significant whack from Brewster. I would be very shocked, Josh, if that didn't result in major suspension damage. You can see that car, the left rear, not the left rear, the left front tire popping in a very odd way. There's got to be some damage on that race car, because that was a big whack.
Oof. Yeah, definitely. I think you're right, Ron. That was probably enough to bend some linkage or something there for sure. And it looks like, he was just kind of trying to set the car up for the corner, and Jim was kind of just in that space a little bit. I'm not sure if he was kind of putting his shoulders out a bit there to show Jim that, hey, I need some room here, or if that was not intentional. But either way, it ended up with Jim kind of in a pretty predicament there, stuck in between the barrier and the wall, and kind of had to do a reverse out of it and lost a ton of time, unfortunately. But that'll take us out of that race. That was really heating up there, Ron, unfortunately.
I gotta say, though, if you are the newcomer of Parnell, maybe not the smartest call to go side by side and bang wheels with the series admin, but there's a very good reason why I'm in the commentary booth instead of one of these race cars, because you can take my word and advice as gospel. Side by side racing through turn number 8. That's Nate Coliseo getting a move done to slip his way up into second, getting a move done with authority, but still not over yet. Kohan maybe got focus on the exit, coming out of 9. Side by side racing. I was thinking of that question I asked you a couple of moments ago, Josh, of the corners that these racers haven't gone side by side through. I feel like turn number 10 of Mike Knight corner, the second to last corner around this racetrack, may be the only one, but I think some drivers went through there side by side at the very start of this race, so you can play me like a fiddle in that regard. Dealing with some traffic at the north end of the field as a spinner behind, I believe that's Parnell, spinning from the lead in the Spec 2 category.
Oh, I just missed that with the corner of my eye there, Ron. We'll have to go back and check it out, but I am definitely seeing an incident report here. Edwin Parnell has crashed, so let's have a quick look here and see if we can't find out what happened. That is unfortunate, Ron.
Yeah, let's see what happened to the driver of the 556 car, heading his way down into the final corner, fittingly named last corner, and you can see the drift through there, and just going to overtake him. Tokyo Drift, the Okayama Drift, not as classy as a Tokyo Drift, as we're going to see this time riding on board with this race car. It's through turn number 10, which I'll circle back to in a couple of moments. I'm curious whether or not the gravel kicked onto the racetrack could have been the reason why that rear end of the race car kicked around on.
Oh my goodness, as we get back to live action here, and there's a wall of cars going in. I was going to say something, but I'm going to hold that thought for a moment, just because it looks like we have a wall of V's here driving around together in a brick of cars. And it looks like they've sort of single filed out now there, Ron. But wow, it's getting pretty contentious out there as far as, from about second back. But I think you're right there, Ron. That's why I jumped back to that replay from on board as quickly as I could there. I'm pretty sure that, that gravel had something to do with that, Ron, and we just keep seeing it. It's something that we're all sort of newly having to deal with here as we go side by side as the coming around the penultimate corner of the lap here, and it looks like they're going to single file out again. I would imagine we get a pretty good draft down this front straight here for another attack into T1, but that gravel rearing its head, Ron.
Yeah, that gravel is becoming, slowly but surely, becoming an iRacer's nightmare. Forget netcode, gravel is the new boogeyman for iRacers worldwide. Side-by-side racing between Kohan and Coliseo. That's through turn number 1, and they're going to stay side by side now into turn 2 with Colacio on that inside line. Look at Chris Montgomery involved in this battle, running in 4th at the moment. Finds himself being the meat of this sandwich, but side-by-side racing going on right in front of him. Montgomery gonna get involved in it, maybe gonna get a move done. Thought about it for sure. Heading down into Atwood curve of turn 4, maybe a little bit of contact going to Chris Montgomery as well. I saw that car kind of jerk around a little bit through that corner, but you can see Montgomery maybe gonna size up a move on Colacio, as Colacio may try and get a move done on Kohan. 3 wide, I wouldn't rule it out. There we go. That's Colacio pulling out Montgomery. Going to enjoy the draft from Colacio's race car. And I think he's going to back out of it, not risking it into turn number 5, but still side-by-side racing involving the front 2 in this battle. These two battling for the final 2 podium spots left in this race as Jason Green continues to pull away up at the front. And you can see the gravel being kicked up on the racetrack. And now Josh, as Kohan goes off the track again, that adds credence to the point I was going to mention. Kohan's going to have to take it easy, because I think if he continues that for the final 10-plus minutes of this race, he may find himself getting flat-out disqualified for incident point limits.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, Ron. We have seen him go off track a few times, more than a few times now, I would say, and either just trying to make a move work or not lose his momentum and so on, and that's going to start catching up to you. I believe this is the same as the rest of the leagues, is 13x and you're in the pit for a hold, and any more than that, I believe it's around 18 and you get DQ'd, and I would imagine he's getting pretty close to that hold through the pit at this stage in the race, Ron.
Yeah, at this point in time, it's been so aggressive what we've seen from Kohan thus far. Finding himself in P2, getting those moves done. The real thing is, aggression really isn't rewarded in a series like this, as I think there may have been off-track mode involving Parvinder Ladar and Michael Ladarullo heading through turn number 1 a couple of moments ago. But in this series, aggression does not pay. Look at Jason Green, for instance. He's not an aggressive racer by any means. He can definitely get down and start to battle when it suits his case, but he usually keeps it clean and keeps it rather mellow, and he leads this race 5.2 seconds. But look at this, Thortulo cutting his way through the field. We saw him have that off-track moment not terribly long ago, and he has come back from the brink of extinction. Look at that. That is 5-6 cars covered by just about nothing on this racetrack, nearly 4 wide through the corner. Look at Colacio going in way deep into turn 5. He's got to lose out on that spot on Chris Montgomery and maybe make Colacio and too long contact being made. Heading down into turn number 6, that's going to send Montgomery off the track. Colacio going to join him as well. It's not going to be the second win of the season for Nate Colacio in that 25. That's going to cut that battle down a little bit more. Kohan leading at 1.2 seconds in front of Tulo, so those two occupying the final 2 podium spots. He was leading that pack for quite a long ways, but here's the side-by-side racing ending in tears, and oh boy.
Yeah, that was pretty unfortunate. It looks like, I'm going to have another quick look at that, I think, but it looks like, unfortunately, kind of just wasn't really expecting the brakes to be put on quite so abruptly there. He's a little too close maybe, and yeah, and then just no avoidance there, unfortunately. Just couldn't get out of the way for the other driver there, and ends up in the kitty litter, and that will be that, at least for that particular battle.
I gotta say, though, touching back to the point we raised a couple of moments ago, as Chris Montgomery has now come down pit lane as Nate Colacio remains out on the racetrack. This may be a blessing in disguise for Richie Kohan. Of course, having some very aggressive and very fast racers taking out of a battle you found yourself in the midst of throughout a decent chunk of this race, going to be a good thing. However, one thing that should be raised, and going back to the point we mentioned about incident points, having less cars involved in an intense battle is going to make the chances of a big accident a little bit lessened. It's still not entirely out of the picture, but that chance has dropped. So Richie Kohan, I think, considering the amount of times he's gone off the track, he is definitely probably a couple of 4Xs away from just getting DQ'd almost immediately. So that's going to be something that will possibly help out Kohan, even if he loses out on the spots to Tulo and Khan. 4th place would be a hell of a lot better than a DNQ.
Yeah, absolutely. DSQ, yep, absolutely, Ron. Yeah, I think you got a good point there for sure. It's sort of released him now as well up there. Maybe he can go chase down Jason Green as well now. That's really the only The only plus side you can look at something like that is that we're looking at on board with Antonio Reese here, who desperately needs to pull a tear off from his helmet. Oh, it looks like, was that Russ Lumberg in front of him losing it there?
That was Telker.
Or was that Telker? Russell Telker, sorry, was just lost it a little bit in front of him there, losing a position to Antonio Reese here with the very dirty pull-off.
Yeah, I am shocked that he can see through it. Part of me wonders as to whether or not iRacing is rather good with us looking at the perspective of these drivers, and in terms of when they pull a tear off, that tear off will get yoinked from our perspective as well, because
the same thing there.
some of these visors are looking positively dirty, about as dirty as a George Carlin comedy set. Second time I've raised up that joke in the span of about a week, so I will maybe put that one in my back pocket or just donate to Goodwill or something like that. Here's Tulo. Looking rather clean at the moment. His race car is looking rather clean as well, you know, despite the fact that he and Kohan, these two, actually, no, the Sun Gang in the view, and now look at that. Holy cow, I think I've seen gas station bathrooms look cleaner than that. But Tortolo running in P3 at the present moment. That was a horrendous quote. I apologize for that. He's going to start to battle with the same driver he came to blows with earlier on in the race. I mentioned the incident point issue with Kohan, and Tulo trying to do a little bit of damage limitation. You know, he's going to lose some ground in terms of that championship lead, as Jason Green is completely checked at now 5.8 seconds in front of Kohan and 6 in front of Tolo. But at this point in time, Tor may be going to limit that damage a heck of a lot if he gets a move done for second. As a spin for Szynski and a big amount of drama heading down into turn 5.
Oh boy, I'm not exactly sure what we just walked into, Ron, but that did not look good. Let's see if we can't get a replay perhaps of what happened, but that looked like quite the tangle of cars all together there, and it looks like actually there's quite a bit of incident report on this one. This one might be a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff going on there based off the fact we saw a car get popped up into low Earth orbit. Looked like a move from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Szynski spins, he gets hit, and then bang, coming in. What in the... Holy cow, we got two cars parked on top of each other. One driver parked on another's head. So I'm not sure who that was. I can see May. I'm looking
it's like Lattarullo.
Lattarullo possibly.
Lattarullo and Matthias Marin, I believe. Yeah, I believe it was Marin and Lattarullo here. Let's have a quick look at from his perspective here and see what he saw. He's gonna see, right in front of him, nowhere to go, and then just gets hopped up on top of, and we're stuck and we're trying to work it out, and then I think he just thought better of it. I'm out of here, and that's it. Unfortunately, just a bit of an awkward incident there, Ron.
Yeah, so that was Matthias Marin in the 214 car that got involved in that incident with Szynski and Lattarullo through turn 5. Tough for all of them because that was it was a pretty okay race for the lot of those racers, but then as a result of that drama, some damaged race cars, and I think we may have to send a bill to Matthias Marin for taking out the camera on Michael Lattarullo's race car, because that's some very bizarre stuff going on a couple of moments ago. We'll say, and I say this in the other hopes that I don't jinx it, haven't seen a flip yet in this race. Keyword being yet, we still got 3 minutes left to go. Tulo currently finds himself in P2. Richie Kohan making his way up into 3rd. And Suleiman Khan, who we haven't really talked about thus far in this race, rounding out the top 4 in that small little cluster of Spec 1 racers. Or is currently finding himself in P5 overall in the lead. In the Spec 2 category, Ethan Orr, the driver of the 222, haven't really talked about him too much thus far during this broadcast, but he's made up 14 spots, Josh. This has been a really good drive for the 222 car, and unless some sort of major drama goes on that drops him behind Russ Telker, running all the way down in 10th, it looks like Ethan Orr going to be taking the victory in the Spec 2 category, which will make him the first driver, other than Andrew Love, to win in Spec 2 this season.
Yeah, that's an awesome showing here for Orr this first round for sure. Obviously, we're not quite over yet. We've got a few laps here left to go, and he is pretty close to this battle in front of him, so anything can still happen here, but that is a great showing for Orr here from S2 for sure. Punching pretty above his weight here, you know, getting in front of people like Manny and racing with people like Tor and Khan here is not an easy task, and he seems to be making fairly short work of it here, just kind of... Actually, it kind of looks like he's sort of just biding his time, looking for an opportunity here, as he's maybe going to look for one here up into this corner. don't think so. I think he's going to hold on for another one here. So looking some pretty good patience here from Oron.
Well, he's holding off for another, but after that, there is no other. We're coming to the white flag this time by, and look at this. Parvino Lador nearly running off into the dirt, trying to get moved on Ewan Parnell, heading down that back straightaway. Very close racing. Look at Parnell nearly cutting across the front end of Lador's race car, but these two battling for P12 and P13 overall. That fighting is going to be intense coming to the checkered flag. Look at the gravel heading through. That's turn number 7 that those two racers just went through. That's turn number 7 of Piper. Really nice to have some good corner names around this racetrack, and the racing has been intense. But for the battle for the lead, there's really no fight at the moment. Jason Green just about fighting with his own boredom as it stands, currently leading this race by about 8 seconds. Coming to the white flag this time by, so only one more lap of racing action and 11 corners for Jason Green to grab his first checkered flag of this season. However, Tortola, I apologize. We got some word about the correct pronunciation of Tor's name. We've been calling him by a different pronunciation for a while. That's a very hard habit to break out of, so I apologize for any of the mispronunciations throughout this broadcast. A side-by-side racing with Parnell and Ladar, nearly coming to blows through turn number 1. Ewan Parnell has been really aggressive throughout this race, making a series debut. It's not going to be the Spec 2 win for him, but he is definitely maybe won the award for having the most amount of camera attention on him. Saw him involved in that incident with Jim Brewster earlier on, but he's been a rather exciting driver to keep tabs on throughout this race, as I believe the battling up towards the front of the field is going to heat up yet again. There we go, fanning out 3 wide down that back straightaway off into turn number 5, and look at that contact being made with Tolo and Kohan. That could have ended in tears. Look at Suleiman Khan looking to pick up the pieces, and look at Ethan Orr involved in this battle as well. Orr leading in the Spec 2 category. If these 3 drivers go off the circuit in a cloud of dust and steam in the final 4 corners of this race, it'll be Ethan Orr finishing on an overall podium, which would be a brilliant result for the Spec 2 man. But now it looks like Tortolo going to remain in second. The fight may be on between Kohan and Khan. That's going to be a fun finish to call in a couple of moments' time. Meanwhile, going well farther up the road, Jason Green just entirely checked out of it in this race. And in the end, the driver of the 160 car going to take a commanding victory from the 4th race of this season. Looking at the battling a little bit farther behind, it looks like it's going to remain line astern as some side-by-side racing coming to the checkered flag right behind them. Looks like Alan Degas is going to win it in the Masters category, as Monty and Coliseum were covered by nothing at the line.
Yeah, that was a super close one. We got a couple more pretty close ones here in Fitzgerald and Antonio Reese. They're coming across the line pretty close, and then probably the closest one after that would be Straczynski here and Jeff Jacobson, or I believe that was Garcia in front of him here as well. But pretty close down to the line there, Ron. Looks like Jason Green pretty much running away with it today, but really good action just behind him. And we got Ethan Orr here really doing a great job today in S2 to bring it home in 5th overall. I believe this was his first outing as well, so excellent race for him. You could definitely see him out there just kind of biding his time a little bit too. He kind of seemed to know what position he was in, that he was probably leading S2, and looked like he was probably just happy to stay where he was there.
Yeah, I can't necessarily blame him if he risked it and tried to go for the move. Who knows, it could have ended in tears and he may have lost the win in the Spec 2 category, so I can't blame him in the least for just wanting to remain calm, cool, and collected come time for the checkered flag in this race. But well done to Ethan Orr, the 222 car, taking the win in Spec 2. Alan Degassis, a man who we're riding on board with right now in the 927. He ends up winning it in the Masters class, and of course Jason Green taking a dominating victory from this race. His first checkered flag of this season. May not be the last, though. Those two gave us a brilliant championship fight to talk about in reference to Green and Tolo. And we've kind of been thinking that we're going to have a case of deja vu this season. And it kind of has come to pass, considering the fact that Green found himself in P2 in the championship coming into this race. However, that gap between those two made it you need some shuffling up to go on. But nevertheless, the shuffling up has come, and in the end, Green going to take it and take a little bit of a nibble out of that gap in the championship between himself and Tolo.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to kind of heat things up a little bit here going into round 5. Absolutely. We have a bit more points to think about and stuff here too, as well as Alan DeGassis being able to get in front of Jorg Manny in the Masters class, at least for this round here. Not an easy task. Jorg Manny, this season and basically all of the machinery has really been driving very well. So beating him isn't easy, and Alan DeGassis should definitely take that one to the bank, and hopefully he can continue to show some good pace here against York for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think we've got a fantastic season in front of us. Already have 4 races on the board, and oh god, here we go. This is the weekly Formula Vee Weekend Warriors Crash 'em Up Wreckfest at the Checkered Flag. May God have mercy on both Josh and I's graphics cards, because the amount of dust and dirt and smoke getting kicked up in the air is absolutely immense. Already have 2 cars upside down. I think Jason Perry may be one of them, and make that 3. Make that 4, actually, as Andrew Love lawn darted himself in the gravel trap about 50 feet behind those racers. And there's Michelle Lynn upside down as well. Oh, boy, howdy. That's another car upside down right in the back of shot with Sam. And there's Parvinder Ladar getting tapped by, that's Wayne Buttermore. Those two coming to blows, and oh my god, coming in for the kill. That is 981, who we just saw come to blows with the car that was upside down. That, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, is Nick Tullo. And more Crash 'em Up wreckfesting going on. I just heard someone's motor blow up. The unmistakable sound of metal snapping on the iRacing platform. And as these goofy, and there goes your body upside down, and right back on his wheels, and the motor blew up, and he's back upside down, and nearly ballparked it. Holy cow.
All that gravel on the road too. We can see this particle system working extra hard here as they thrash around in the dirt and kick it up in the air. You can definitely see that it's working. It's magic here. Is not sure what Antonio Reese is doing there, but a lot of smoke flying from the cockpit cannot be a good thing, Ron.
I feel like there's a joke to be made about smoke coming up in the cockpit. However, I will refrain. There's a nice onboard shot of Antonio Reese's 914 car, and getting a very close view as to what the gravel looks like on the iRacing platform. Any drivers who ran into some difficulties throughout this race touching the gravel and spinning off the circuit, that's what did it to you. It looks like just a bunch of pixels clumped up together and colored gray. Oh, I think someone just took out the camera on the back of Parvinder Ladar's race car. Oh, and right as that crash was made, I think iRacing decided, nope, we've had enough of this, and yoinked all of them back to pit lane. So a rather funny end to another Formula Vee Weekend Warriors race from this still very young season. 4 races now on the board, still 8 more left to go. I mentioned how we capped off the final, the first quarter, now capped off the first third. So there you go. Nice little tidbit of information for you, but I think probably a more pressing bit of information is the result. And in the end, Jason Green going to take the checkered flag in the 160 car. Tortolo rounds out the top 2, and then Richie Kohan running at your podium in 3rd. Then we have Solomon Khan in 4th. Ethan Orr in P5 taking the Spec 2 victory. Alan DeGassis going to finish in 6th in front of Jorg Manny, who does not go for 3 straight this season. He ends up P2 of the Masters Racers, P7 overall. Nate Coliseo going to finish in 8th. Russell Telker in P9. Antonio Reese going to round at your top 10. Then we have David Fitzgerald in 11th. Ewan Parnell in 12th. Parvinder Ladar in 13th. Jaureblio Garcia finishes in P14. Dan Szynski in 15th. Jeff Jacobson in P16. Travis Rail in 17th. Jim Brewster, Series Admin, in P18. And running at your top 20 is going to be the 19th place finisher of Nick Tullo, and Chris Montgomery running at your top 20.
And then our giant field today, almost 40 cars. 21st is Jeffrey Beck in the S2 category. Jesus Rodriguez, bit of a falling anvil for him today, unfortunately, kind of shuffling him back in the S1 class in 22nd. Mark Cohn in 23rd, also kind of getting caught up in some stuff today there. Michelle Lynn finishing in 24th. Didn't really see a whole lot of her on track today, with Daniel Salmon behind her in 25th. Russ Lundberg in 26th. Guido Marzucci, who he finally got classed correctly there from S2 back up to S1 in 27th. Brian Hansen in 28th, Jason Perry in 29th, also getting involved in some shenanigans there today with Andrew Love in 30th, Jason Grider in 31st, Michael Lattarulo in 32nd, Carl Burke in 33rd, Wayne Buttermore, our sponsor for today's race, thank you very much, in 34th, and Brian Straczynski in 35th. Matthias Martin in 36th, and then I believe there may have been 2 more. James Sheldon, 15 laps down, unfortunately, in 37th, and CJ Berry in S1 class. We'll get that all sorted out for next week. Also 15 laps down and falling to the wayside from falling anvil as well, Ron.
Yeah, so some falling anvils coming down and striking these racers, but one driver who I would say benefited from some of his competitors striking themselves with a falling anvil is Jason Green, who I can see up there in the interview waiting area. Gonna drag him in for a little chat in just a couple of moments' time. Jason Green, though, taking the checkered flag from the opening, not the opening race, for the first time this season from the 4th round of this season. Jason Green now joining us in the commentary booth. And now, Jason, I will start off this interview by asking you a real quick question. How long was it into that race until you started checking your email? Because you completely checked that after that incident hang through turn number 8 with some of your competitors.
Yeah, probably about the time the gap hit 3 or 4 seconds is when I started having to remind myself to focus. Because yeah, it was it was a little challenging there. They're just battling so hard behind that yeah, I could make a lot of mistakes and still gain time. So yeah, got super lucky there.
Yeah, I will say that drama heading off into turn number 8 certainly made that race a little bit easier for you, and maybe making up for the massive amount of stress that you felt the last time the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series ran at this track at the end of last season. And I want to ask you kind of about the difference in the races and how it felt tackling this race here today, running effectively in no man's land throughout a decent chunk of it, comparing that driving experience to how it felt last season with all that pressure surrounding the championship battle.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is obviously the second half of this race, or the last 3/4 of it, were just hot lapping essentially. First part of it was kind of just like avoidance almost. Richie wasn't driving that smart, and it was slowing us all up a lot. So yeah, we weren't escaping at all. So it was very different battling than battling last time with Thor and CJ, where we were just essentially Thor and I were just trying to lead the most laps, but we were still not necessarily working with each other, but not slowing each other down. So yeah, I was just trying to get hopefully in front of Thor and Richie, and then try to have them battle and then run away. It's kind of super unfortunate for Thor that he got tangled up there, but that was an amazing recovery.
Yeah, it was a pretty shocking recovery. I could barely even process what I was seeing when we jumped back to him running in 5th, involved in that hornet's nest that was going on behind you all throughout that race once you checked out. But still a really good drive for you, taking the first checkered flag of this season, and a really good time to do it as well. But we're going to be heading into a real wild card of a race. Thruxton with the Formula Vees. Talk about a draft fest. Boy, howdy. What are your thoughts heading into that race in 1 week's time?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's Okayama's a draft track, but Thruxton is going to be much more of a draft track, I think. And there's really nowhere to really break the draft, I think. I haven't driven it in the V yet, but just based on what we how it drove in the runoffs at the end of last season, yeah, it'll be wild, because in the V's you can't really once you pull out of the draft, you stall out. So you can't really decisively pass just via the draft. So I'm sure we'll be like 4 and 5 wide into the chicane.
I am mentally bracing myself for whatever demons are going to exist. If there's 6, I will say this right now on the air. If there is 6 wide racing come time for the Thruxton round in 1 week's time, I will on air eat a tissue. And I will just say that right away. Josh can attest to the fact that I've eaten some paper products on some broadcasts. Him and I have been on together, which is a very bad thing to bring back. But I'm going to just say that right off the bat. I don't even think that's possible around the track, but who knows? We're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think there's actually plenty of room for 6 wide. We might even be able to go 7 or 8. It's a really, really wide track, and the V is really, really small. So yeah, it'll be wild for sure.
I may have just doomed myself with that bet right there, but I am a man of my word, and I will keep to it. So, man, that tissue box is going to be under a lot of pressure, as you drivers will be come time for the next race of the season. But Jason Creed, thank you for joining us in the commentary booth. And before we let you go, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, shout out to Michelle, as always, for being my setup engineer. She again gave me an amazing setup that I couldn't be as fast as I was today without her help. So massive shout out to her. Also, I think I said Thor earlier instead of Tor, so sorry Thor. Sorry Tor. I forgot again. But yeah, shout out to everybody in the league that showed up today. Once again, we had crazy number of drivers here. So yeah, this league wouldn't, as Stevie always says, this league wouldn't be anything without everybody showing up every week. So yeah, shout out to everybody.
And these broadcasts wouldn't be the way they are if it weren't for you drivers, including yourself, showing up and having a chat with us after the end of these races. Jason Green, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, y'all. Oh, and I forgot, thanks, Adam, for the livery.
There you go. Always got to shout out the old boss man here at SMB. And that was Jason Green joining us in the commentary booth. And I think don't have any more drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. Josh, I think we may need to upgrade our cookie recipes to bring some more drivers in here to have a chat with us. But nevertheless, we got some stuff coming up here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, because I said it earlier on, folks, and I will mention it again. The action does not stop every single Wednesday for, still trying to figure out what the other name should be, Wild Card Wednesday, shall we say. We've got the action with the Ray Esports Club Racing League and the Sim Racers Group Intermediate F4 Championship going live on the same night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with group number 3 and round number 3 for the Ray Esports Club Racing League. Some Formula Vee is going to be running along with the Spec Racer Fords, and the Intermediate F4 is going to have another fantastic race. And in terms of the Weekend Warriors action, it does not stop either. We've got the Formula V's running today, the Formula Fords going to be running tomorrow, and the Spec Racer Fords going to be making their appearance this upcoming Sunday. All the action coming up here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. That's the sampler of all the stuff going on, and you want to tune in to all of the action here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, remember to hit that subscribe button, if I can spit that word out properly, and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the action here exclusively on Slow Motion Broadcasting. As I mentioned in that interview with Jason, though, Josh, the next time we're going to be seeing these Formula Vee Weekend Warriors racers, it's going to be at Thruxton in 1 week's time. That's going to be a draft fest. I may have doomed myself with that tissue bet, but holy cow, that race is going to be epic.
Yeah, I think so, Ron. It's a bit of a question mark, at least for me anyways. I've never driven around there. I have not turned a lap around Thruxton yet myself, and I actually I had to miss our special race there at Christmas time with Ray Esports. I was actually away and I didn't catch it, so I don't really know too much about Thruxton, so I'm pretty excited to see exactly how that's going to race. I've heard it's it's pretty wide and drafty, and I don't think it's super technical either, so it should end up being a pretty wild race, I think, here in the V's-Ron, and I'm definitely here for it. And I'd like to just once again thank Wayne Buttermore for sponsoring today's race here at SMB, and yeah, that's about it for me, Ron. I think that was a great race today, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, it's going to be a real good show in just 1 week's time. All the action here at SMB, though. You want to stay tuned for the stuff coming up this weekend. Josh is going to be on track. I'll be in the commentary booth for that, and have it be known that the Formula Fords and Spec Racer Fords still give some pretty good action. But here for the Formula V's for round number 4 of this Season 1 for 2025, I think that will just about do it. And so for myself, Ron Maunz, and Josh Wilkie joining me, working the comms and the cams on today's broadcast, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not-too-distant future.